If you've ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix or have any other true scary story you may want to hear me read, go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to submit the story. And of course, thank you. This happened to me in December of 1969. I'm a retired RN. I've experienced or witnessed many things that are beyond understanding, but I'm also a critical thinker, and my story changed my thoughts on our limited view of reality forever. I was with my high school boyfriend on a typical Friday date night in Jeffersonville, Indiana. After socializing with friends at the local hangouts, we would ride out on the rural back roads that were located between downtown and my home in a subdivision. There were dairy farms and cornfields on either side of the road for about 6 miles. The few homes along this stretch sat on the back of properties, and there were a couple of equipment paths that led to small open fields that were our teenage parking spots. And past that, the 2-lane narrow road was heavily wooded with no homes or cleared property for 10 miles. This particular road had many curves and hills, which is typical for southern Indiana. Its sparse population and teenage driving led to many accidents. There were no cell phones in those days, and SOP, if one saw an accident, it was to stop, help, and pray for another motorist to appear, to flag down to send to the nearest house to call the police and ambulance, or to transport the victims to the hospital yourself. It was a very cold December night, and snow flurries began. We left our parking area immediately as my curfew wasn't to be missed. The remainder of our drive to my house was through the wooded area, and on straightways we saw taillights quite a bit ahead. As we were approaching the second sharp curve, we saw headlights shining from ground level and at an angle towards us. We immediately slowed and pulled as far off the road as possible. The grille was damaged, and the passenger side had struck a tree. The headlights in the otherwise pitch-black night were blinding. A fully restored, beautiful 1956 Chevy had apparently tried to take the curve too fast and had lost control. The car was off the road, on its roof. My boyfriend, Greg, grabbed his flashlight and got another for me along with the first aid kit from the trunk, and we ran to assist anyone that might be injured. The headlights had kept us from seeing how many passengers the car held. I clearly remember my heart pounding from the adrenaline, and my mind fearing injuries as nobody was shouting back to our calling out, and nobody was attempting to get out of the car. I could smell the strong odor of gasoline and burned rubber. The engine was running and was making a knocking sound. Greg got down on his knees and opened the driver's side door, and I opened the back. The car was empty. He reached up and turned the ignition. The engine was now off, and the woods were silent. Nothing was making sense. Our headlights and flashlights were giving us light, and we started searching for a possible injured person. The windows were rolled up and starting to fog. Greg had already searched the interior. At this point, our assumption was that the driver must have gotten out and we just hadn't seen him or her. We didn't understand why they hadn't answered us as we ran to help or why the car had been left running. We continued to search for a person around the wreck. We tried to go into the woods, but the underbrush and steep embankment was impossible to climb. At this point, we decided whoever was driving may have just walked away. We got back into Greg's car and drove slowly 3 miles back, and then turned around and drove slowly the next 6, fully expecting to find someone needing a ride home or to a phone. We were relieved that the driver must not be hurt, but couldn't imagine why they didn't see us. and how they had left on foot without us seeing them. No other vehicles had come down the road. At this point, the remaining road that we drove was covered with snow, and we saw no tracks. There were no houses. We went to my house where my parents were waiting, and I was really late. Greg told my father what had happened, and then described the car and how beautifully restored it was, in case he knew to whom it may belong. The whole incident just left us baffled. By the next day, we decided that maybe there was a house in the woods or side road that we missed. We both were just unsettled by it. We didn't know why we were worried about what now appeared to be a non-event. The next day, we went back to the scene of the accident. Both of us felt that we would find a house close by that had gone unnoticed, or a side road. Something. We didn't understand why we were still dwelling on it, but little did we know that quite the opposite was what we found. The car was still there, but had been moved into a clearing in the trees. I will never understand what happened the night of the Chevy whose taillight we followed hit that curve and rolled. There it was, still on its roof. The damaged grille and the front fender damaged. The accident on a Friday night. Here we stood, on Sunday afternoon, at the car. The paint was faded. The body was completely rusted through over a majority of it. The tires were completely rotted and the rims were rusted. The interior was dry rotted and covered with mold. The windows were gone and the windshield was broken with a basketball-sized hole full of vines growing in and out of the car. The embankment we had tried to search was now a clearing, and setting further back into the woods was a small abandoned 2-room shack. We later did a property search, but it only led us to owners that had bought the acreage with the shack and car on it. All we were left with was a lifetime of questions surrounding a cold December night. It has been years now, but that night still haunts me. Hi Raven, I hope you're doing well. I wanted to share a bizarre event that happened to me, my sister, and my cousin when we were kids. They all remember it to this day as well, and none of us are able to explain it. My sister and I used to share a room, with our beds parallel to each other. We had 2 plushies that we played with all the time. Hers was Tweety, the yellow bird from that old cartoon, and mine was Jerry, from Tom and Jerry. In this game of ours, the goal was to toss our plushies into the opposite bed, so she would have to defend her bed from my plushie by hitting it with her hand, as if we were playing tennis, while trying to throw her toy onto my bed, and vice versa. Sometimes the plushies would fall into the crack between the bed and the wall, ending up under the bed. This would be annoying since the time spent looking for it would allow the opponent to easily win by a point, by having clear access to the bed without the defense from the other side. We often had fun with this plushie war, and our cousin knew about it too. One time he was spending a few days at our place, and I was playing the game with him, as my sister was in the other room. At one point, I was looking for my Jerry plushie, which fell behind the bed, when he threw Tweety onto my bed. It bounced against the wall, and as much as I remember, I felt it hit the mattress. My cousin recalls that it fell through the crack, so I'm not sure if it ended up on top of or under my bed, but it certainly fell down. However, when I found Jerry and looked up, it wasn't there. I looked under the bed, it wasn't there either. We both searched for it, looking even in the drawers that used to be under the bed, thinking that it might have somehow ended up there, but we just could not find it. We told my sister and my mom, and all of us looked for it for a while to no avail. It just vanished into thin air. A few days later, my cousin was still at our house, and while we were playing, for some reason, he climbed onto the plank at the end of my bed, which was right by the closet. We had some stuff stored on top of the closet, so he probably wanted to take something down. But suddenly, his jaw dropped, and I saw him pick up the Tweety plushie from the top of the closet. We both remember it falling down. If it somehow flew up there, my cousin would see it. Apart from that, it would be impossible to make it end up in the top of the closet while aiming at my bed. It simply didn't make sense. To this day, we still talk about it sometimes. We don't have any rational explanation of how it could have happened, so we just accepted that Tweety got some teleportation skills that day. I work for the biggest coffee shop chain in the world. You know the one I'm talking about. I work late afternoons and nights. We close at 9 p.m. every night, and this story took place around 8 p.m., just before Christmas. We have 3 people working at night since they tend to be slower. I was making all the drinks for customers, my coworker was running the drive-thru, taking orders and handing out drinks, and my supervisor was in the back room eating lunch. We all wear headsets, so that way we can hear customers' orders and communicate with each other. My supervisor wears her headset while on lunch or break, so that way she knows if we need help. We had a fair few customers in the drive-thru, maybe 4 or 5 in line. Every car is just ordering 1 or 2 drinks, until one car orders 5 large hot chocolates. I audibly groaned at this because it takes a while to make 5 drinks. My coworker finished handing out the drinks to the car before the hot chocolate car, and went to take the order of the next. He went back over to take the money of the hot chocolate car, but when he said the total, the people in the car at the window were totally confused. They had only ordered 1 drink. At this point, we were all confused. Neither me nor my coworker saw the hot chocolate car drive away. I confirmed with my coworker that he did indeed hear those hot chocolates being ordered, and that I was not crazy. My supervisor wasn't really listening too well, and she did not hear the hot chocolates being ordered. I don't understand how someone could order 5 drinks, not come to the window, and somehow drive off without either of us seeing them. There's no way to get out of the drive-thru line once you're in it, unless you back out. There were cars on either side of this person, so they were literally trapped with no way out. I keep thinking about this, and I cannot think of a logical answer, since they did not have enough time to leave the drive after the car in front of them drove off. If any of you have a logical explanation, please, let me know. Okay, so this one is a shared experience with my best friend, which she remembers the same. To this day, I believe that this glitch saved our lives. It's gonna be longer, but worth it. We were walking in the midnight hours from one city to another, where I live, because the public transportation was already shut down. It was like a 2-hour walk. At one point, we were walking down the street, where on either side were family houses, which at least 50% of them had dogs sleeping in the garden. We were kind of terrified, as you can imagine, as the dogs went crazy, barking and everything. We were even joking that if one of the dogs escaped, we would be dead. Well, we're at the end of the street and suddenly notice something odd. There is this house with a pretty small fence, like 80 centimeters or something, and in the garden is a German Shepherd. Like, who the hell buys this dog with such a small fence? We discussed it, and we were both terrified the dog would escape. As we came to the point where we have 2 options on how to continue, one longer path but with public lights, and one shorter through the forest, where it was dark. We decided to take the longer and safer one when suddenly we hear paws on the ground. We froze. The German Shepherd was right behind us. He came, sniffed us, and went ahead a few meters, sat down and waited. We were still terrified of what this strange dog who didn't know us would do to us, so we changed our minds and went straight to the forest. He came, sniffed us, and then went ahead to the forest, sat down, and waited. So we decided to take the first way with the streetlights. As you probably now know, the dog came, sniffed us, and then went a few meters, sat down, and waited. We came to the conclusion that this dog was of no harm and went along to the original path. It was still the same scenario. Dog sniffed us, went ahead a few meters, and then waited for us to come. Then again, until suddenly, out of nowhere, appeared another dog. I believe that it was some kind of Great Dane mix. He was furious, aggressive, went right in front of us with his teeth out, growling. We wanted to go back, but didn't want to turn our backs to the dog. Suddenly he jumped, with his teeth ready to bite us, and then our now dog friend came to the rescue. They fought. We cried terrified that one of the dogs would get hurt, but by some miracle nothing happens to either one of them. The Great Dane just ran away. That German Shepherd came with us all the way to my house. We gave him some food and water, and he then disappeared, and we guessed went home. About a week later, we were still worried the dog may not have found his way home, so we came to check on him. The house wasn't there. The obnoxiously small fence wasn't there either, and there was no German Shepherd in the street. But if it wasn't for him, we would have either died or gotten injured by that Great Dane. So, thank you, Matrix, for saving our lives. Here's a short little glitch that my friend and I experienced. Several months back, I believe it was like mid-August, my friend and I started moving forward with our plans to start taking up camping and hiking as a hobby. We eventually wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. Part of this included getting all of our supplies and doing many closer-to-home hikes. The glitch happened during the process of getting our camping supplies. We were getting a lot of stuff that day, but I made a point of making sure that we got our trail food, like packaged oatmeal and some type of egg and sausage meal, because it just looked really delicious. Well, we get up to the counter and the woman rings us up. I know for certain that we had put the trail food on the counter and had it rung up because the cashier was having trouble scanning it. Eventually it goes through, and we put the bag with the trail food in our cart and then load it into our car. We double-check to make sure that everything is in there, and then head home. We unload everything, but don't really look through it too much right away. Lunchtime rolls around, and I ask my friend if he wanted to try one of those oatmeals to make sure that we actually like it, before deciding for sure that that's what we'd be packing for our hike. He says yes, so we begin searching all of the bags for our trail food. It was not there. Our first thought was that we had accidentally left it in the trunk. We checked. It wasn't there. We searched the rest of the car before assuming it fell out of the cart or something on the way to the car. But then I asked my friend to check the receipt so that we could go back and get new trail food. He looked at the receipt and saw that none of the trail food was on it. Weird. Both of us were sure that we had it, and, as mentioned, the cashier had definitely rung it up and handed it back to us. We decided to just call it a brain fog moment. Our trip wasn't for another few weeks, so we had time to go get new trail food. Eventually, my friend goes back to the store on his own, and the same thing happens with the trail food. He swears up and down that the cashier rung him up for it. But when he got home, it just wasn't in the car. Eventually, we did get our trail food. Third time's the charm. But we did find it a little strange. When I was in college in the early 2000s, I drove this small two-door hatchback car from the 70s. When I say small, I mean the front was 2 bucket seats with only the emergency brake in between. With the exception of a wee glove compartment, there was no storage. No backseat pouches, not even a cup holder. So, one day I'm getting in the car, and I have this makeup bag. I couldn't tell you where I was going or what I was doing, honestly. I'm not really a makeup person, so bringing the bag with me was unusual in the first place. But I do know that I had the makeup bag. Until I didn't. When I reached my destination, it was nowhere to be found. I searched that car multiple times for that bag that evening. Again, the car was small, so there weren't really many places to hide, especially considering the bag is roughly half the size of a loaf of bread. And the entire interior of the car is black, while the bag was quite colorful. I looked under the front seats, and in the floor. The back seat is solid, one bench seat with no gap underneath. It's not there. I go so far as to look in the hatch just in case I unknowingly threw it over the back seat. No luck. I look in the spare tire compartment. At this point, I'm pretty sure I'm losing my mind. Over the next few months, I return to the car to check and recheck for the bag. I go so far as to detailing the entire interior of the car, vacuuming everything, and cleaning even the tiniest spaces with a Q-tip. Even places that I knew the bag could not be, like under the floor mat. I looked. It was gone. I convinced myself that it must have fallen onto the floorboard and out of the car while I was getting gas. Fast forward a year later, I stopped to get gas. In my memory, this is the same gas station that I stopped at on the day that I lost the bag, but this was long enough that I can't be sure. And I'm standing at the rear of the car by the gas tank. I happen to look in the small window to the back seat, and I notice something sitting on the rear floorboard. When I enter the car to investigate, I find the makeup bag. It's just sitting there, all alone, out in the open, perfectly visible, just like it had been there all along. I couldn't give you a specific date, but the 3 of us would have been about 19 years old. I remember that I already had a driving license and what car I had. I estimate that it will be about 15 years ago, 2008, maybe 2007. Well, the 3 of us were in the building lobby of one of my friends. At that time, we often met in that lobby to talk before going out to party. We didn't have a penny, and I think it was winter, so instead of drinking in the streets or something like that, we were there for a few hours, and then sometimes we went out, and sometimes we didn't. The lobby in question was one of those where there is a doorman during the day, and which has 2 or 3 sofas. We were on 2 of them. My friends to my right on a large sofa, and I in an armchair. We stayed there for hours, so we used to be barefoot, as if we were in our living room. At that time, from time to time, we were quite rude, and we ended up talking about some deep crap, as if at that age you had a freaking idea of what life was about. And that day we started talking about the afterlife, parallel universes, and stuff like that. One day it was that, another day politics, or whatever. And the fact is that, at some point, when we had been talking about these topics for about 2 to 3 hours, my 2 friends jumped off the couch at the same time and began to run towards the exit onto the street. Halfway, there would be about 10 to 15 meters to the door. Seeing that I didn't understand anything of what was happening, they told me something like, "Come on, bro, let's get out of here." They scared me, and there we were, the three of us on the streets, barefoot, in a busy neighborhood in the north of a big city, and me without an understanding of anything at all. It took about 5 seconds, but it seemed like a lifetime to me. The fact is that once on the street, I asked them what the hell was going on. They were both very scared, telling me that someone had hit the couch where they were sitting, and that as soon as they felt it, they had that reaction. I hadn't heard anything, but they were both describing the same thing to me and were quite scared. To clarify, that in the lobby, obviously there was absolutely no one other than us, and no way for someone to have entered without us realizing it. Furthermore, that sofa was almost attached to a wall, so it was absolutely impossible for anyone to have hit this sofa. No way. At this point, once on the street, we turn out onto the main street. Let me explain. The doorway opened onto some small private gardens, and out of fear, I suppose, we decided to go out onto the sidewalk of the main street. We were still in shock. One of my friends and I were sitting on a small wall, and the other was standing with his back to us. The two of us who were sitting looked to the left and saw a girl. She was walking to us very close. Like, very, very close. She was by the wall, and the rest of the sidewalk was empty. She walked quite very slowly, and was extremely thin. She was dressed like she was going out for a party, but in a very strange way. And the fact is that she crossed in front of us, perpendicular, and she continued downstairs. The friend who was standing turned to look at her as well when she reached her level. The girl began to go down 4 to 5 stairs, and halfway through, she stopped. She neither turned around nor took anything out of a bag. Nothing. She then continued walking a few meters. At that time, just 10 to 15 meters from where we were, there was a fairly known restaurant and pub, and that stretch of sidewalk was about 8 to 10 meters wide. It was packed with people. Either you get into the crowd or you have to change the sidewalk to pass. The girl began to go among those people, and no one looked at her nor interacted with her in any way. At one point, we lost sight of her. I'm talking about a very short distance, and we were somewhat elevated and we saw perfect from there. My colleague, the one who was sitting, looked at me and said, "If she turned around, I think I would have had a heart attack." In those seconds that the whole situation lasted, we had not had any time referred to the girl among ourselves. But the three of us were clear, and that made no sense. I say three because the one who was standing, the first thing he said to us was, "But what the hell was that?" After this, we decided to return to the building lobby, and in the gardens, we heard 3 quite loud doors slamming, but not all 3 at once. First one, then the others, and then another. Only one of us heard each of them. I don't remember in what order, and we only verbalized it after the third. The 3 of us referred to the noise as a car door slamming, but at a crazy volume. All of the time that I have described to you, from the sofa to this last thing, it would not have been more than 4 to 5 minutes. I know it doesn't make any freaking sense, but that's what we experienced that day. And clarify that none of us were drunk or drugged in any way, nor had any of us 3 had any strange experiences before or after that. And we've talked about it 2 to 3 times since then. It's been years since, and we just don't talk about it. And honestly, we have no idea what happened. One of them is convinced that something strange happened, the other has no idea, and honestly, I think there must be some sort of explanation. One of them, the one that lived in that building, later told us that a few days before, one of his neighbors had died, and that he was convinced that the elevator one of those that has no memory and does not return to the first floor if nobody pushes the button, had gone down to the lobby a couple of times during the night, without any neighbors coming in. It was to my back, so I can't tell you anything about that. But maybe you have some sort of theory, and I'd be more than glad to read it. We've only told this once at dinner with quite a few people, and the truth is that no one understood what the hell had happened to us that night. Hi, Raven. This doesn't seem creepy to some people, but it was terrifying in the moment. My glitch in the Matrix story is when I went to a wrestling match, I brought $5 in my student ID. I went and enjoyed the game. I didn't have to pay as someone paid for me, and this is important later in the story. I went and enjoyed the match. On the way home, I realized that I didn't have my $5 and student ID. I get home, go straight to my closet to put my shoes in, and sitting on the floor is the $5 and my student ID. I look up, and I hear the side door slam. I was home alone. My dog started barking, and I stepped out of my room. As soon as I went out, the lights went out, and I screamed and ran outside. It was dark by now. When I came outside after about 5 minutes, I went back inside. I left the stuff in my closet. I came back in through the front door, and the money and the ID was now on my couch. I threw them out in the garbage outside, and then it stopped happening. I was terrified, but whenever I tell people this, they don't believe me. Hi, Raven. Thank you for gathering all of these beautiful stories. I love listening to them. Here's my story. My sister and I are reminiscing with a childhood friend of my sister's, and an incident comes to mind that happened when my sister and I were on holiday in Austria with my parents. I think I must have been about 12 at the time, and my sister about 15. I told them about that time that my sister's friend called to the phone in the farm where we were staying that holiday. I can still see my sister standing by that telephone that hung in the wall of the farm, and the conversation lasted for ages. At the time, there were only landline telephones, and calling abroad was quite expensive. There were regular discussions among children and their parents about the fact that phone calls should not be made for too long. But this conversation had lasted at least an hour and a half. So when my sister rejoined me and my parents after the conversation, my parents jokingly said, "Well, her father won't be happy when he sees the bill later." My sister replied matter-of-factly, "Oh no, she was walking the dog and went to our house, and she called here from our house." My parents became furious. So intense that it ruined an entire day of that vacation for us all. My sister and her friend are looking at me with their mouths hanging open when I finished my story. Neither of them can remember anything about this. Not that they called each other, not that the girlfriend was in our house, and not that my parents were so angry. We decided that I'll ask my father. My father is older, but still up to date, and his memories are still intact. However, my father also has no memories of this. This memory that is so vividly present in me. I think I may have shifted timelines somewhere along the line or something. So that, my friends, was this week's bizarre collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. A fantastic collection of glitchy goodness. A collection of stories that are weird, bizarre, out there, and just downright mysterious. Mysterious as a gerbil wearing a Superman costume. How did he get the Superman costume on? Why is he wearing the costume? Has Superman been turned into a gerbil? That would be horrifying. Gerbils shooting lasers from their eyes and flying at Mach 3. Could you imagine? I can't. Anyways, good collection of stories, good strange collection of stories this week. Absolutely loved them, so thank you to each and every single one of you who submitted your stories or allowed me to use your story from Reddit. Good mix of both in this one. And yeah, overall, just a good set of stories that I personally enjoyed. Hopefully, all of you, beautiful people, also enjoyed them. If you did, consider hitting that thumbs up button, as it tells the algorithm that you like the video and want to see more of it. If you want to continue to see more content specifically from me, not just Glitch in the Matrix content, consider hitting that subscribe button on the channel. Shockingly, it's about 50-50 whenever it comes to listeners. About 50% of you that listen to my videos are actually subscribed, and then the other 50% isn't subscribed, which is kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but like if I like a channel and listen to more than one of their videos, I hit subscribe. So it's just, I don't know. It's an oddity to me in the end. It is what it is. People will do what they do, and as long as you're listening and enjoying, that's all that really matters to me. So you can also join Patreon memberships or get early access to content like this and other things, depending on what you sign up for. You can also do a super thanks, which is a tip to the channel. Never expected, but always appreciated. And then there's the last thing you can do, which is leaving me a comment. Now, you're free to leave any old comment, as you so choose, but there's something special you can do, which is leave a comment for the word of the week. Last week, the word of the week was a hard one to use. It was quixotic, and a good number of you left comments with the word. On the screen now, and several moments prior to now, is a collection of all the people who left the word of the week sentences. All of these people went above and beyond, left a sentence with the word, and are getting featured here at the end of this video. They're all amazing people. I appreciate them for doing a little extra, and this is my way of saying thank you. Of course, if you commented and didn't use the word, that's okay too. If you didn't comment at all, that's also okay. If you listened, I appreciate you. If you didn't listen, well, I appreciate you too, but also, why aren't you listening, bro? So yeah, one last thank you to all the people who left their sentences with the word of the week last week. Thank you again, and let's move on. This week we're going off list because I wanted to use this word for some stupid reason. It popped in my mind, and whenever words pop in my mind at the end of a video, it means that's going to be the word of the week, because there's some sort of connection with that word telling me to use it, which means I have to use it. So there's that. I don't know what I'm going for here. You get my point. Anyways, this week the word of the week is competition. competition is the act or process of competing, rivalry, the effort of two or more parties acting independently to secure the business of a third party by offering the most favorable terms, active demand by two or more organisms or kind of organisms for some environmental resource in short supply, or a contest between rivals. Competition's a pretty simple word. It's a good word, so leave it in a sentence and you'll be featured in 2 weeks, not next week. Next week is a Glitch in the Matrix compilation, which means Monday will be the regular compilation, Tuesday will be the Glitch in the Matrix Stories to Sleep 2 compilation. They will be the same compilation, but one will be black screen with rain sounds in the video. So, yeah. Comp next week. Leave your comments. Be featured in 2 weeks. Until then, friends, remember you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you're the best you that you can be. Do not forget it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, much love, and of course, sleep well.